What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Scouting the Fins right here on the Three Yards Per Carry podcast feed, also part of the Five Reasons Sports Network. I hope you all had a very happy Thanksgiving and are doing some Black Friday shopping. And I also hope you guys did not have any accidents Black Friday shopping. I hope you guys didn't go to Walmart and get hit in the head just for trying to buy a TV. But if you did get into an accident, your first move should be calling 305 800 PAIN. That's right, 305 800 PAIN. Better Business Bureau accredited with an A+ rating. Your car accident personal injury specialist. Fast connection with trusted doctors and attorneys. Always ready to take your call 24/7. Again, 305 800 PAIN. 305 800 PAIN. And as always, this show is brought to you by ThompsonCigar.com. Use promo code 3yards20 for 20% off your order of $75 or more. Once again, ThompsonCigar.com. Use promo code 3yards20 for 20% off your order of $75 or more. Gentlemen, Coach, and Eric, I hope you all had a very good, very hearty, very full Thanksgiving.
Yeah, of course. Had dinner with the family. Always a good time. We went out yesterday. We always get a live tree, so we chopped down our Christmas tree yesterday and decorated today. So getting into the holiday spirit, but also ready to talk some Dolphins football along with that.
Yeah, it was definitely a good last few days. A lot of food, and excited to talk about some Dolphins football. That's kind of been what's missing from this week. But we have the graphics. We are in the hunt. It is officially that time of year. So I'm ready for it. I'm pumped up.
Pumped up is what it is. 4-7. Fresh off their bye week. Okay. They're currently sitting as the AFC's 11th seed. And if you told me that they would be 2 games behind the Kansas City Chiefs, I would think you would be lying, especially if you told me that in the offseason. Technically, the Dolphins are still in the hunt, and they desperately need a late season push. And the big storyline this week, the Chiefs losing, and 2 major reinforcements coming back from injured reserve in Darren Waller and Austin Jackson. The Dolphins now head into a matchup against the New Orleans Saints, a team with a struggling offense but a physical, disciplined defense. And today, we're breaking down exactly how the Dolphins and the Saints match up, as always, using Coach's Film Nuggets, our analytics, and Eric's amazing opinions. So let's get right to it. They enter week 13 with 2 completely different identities. The offense is transitioning into a heavy personnel run first identity with more 22-23 personnel, 6 offensive lineman sets, jumbo package with Daniel Brunskill as the extra lineman. They just waived Hayden Rucci and Keon Smith as well. So they have, they essentially swapped out Keon Smith for Austin Jackson, and they waived Hayden Rucci, who I thought was actually coming along very decently as a replacement for Julian Hill. And then this Dolphins defense, a complete transformation from an early season disaster to now a top 10, top 12 unit in most core metrics after week 7.
Yeah, I think that the cuts that came along with the reinforcements I thought made a lot of sense. When you talk about reserve offensive linemen, you typically only have 3 on the roster, and currently it was Keon Smith, Dan Brunskill, and Kendall Lamb. With the return of Austin Jackson, Keon Smith's the one that makes sense to let go, and he shouldn't be that difficult to bring back onto the practice squad. As far as Hayden Rucci being released with Darren Waller coming back, that one makes sense as well in the sense that you're always trying to save roster spots. And I think the ideal roster construction for the Dolphins is going to have, 2 Y tight ends and 2 F tight ends. You're going to have your 2 Fs with Waller and Dulcich on the 53 still. Julian Hill is your main Y tight end, but Brunskill's been filling some of that role as well. So it's an area where you can, carry just 3 tight ends by label on the roster and be able to save it there as well. As far as the defense and the evolution of that defense, we're seeing a lot of the 3 safety stuff, which is something we talked about in the preseason of, figuring that's the direction that they want to go. And, we've talked a bunch about the new pieces that they had on this defense. So it makes sense that they'd be gelling here as we get into the second half of the season. I really wish that the record obviously was in a better place, because it's a new thing for the Dolphins to be getting these reinforcements back later into the season and feeling like they're going to be playing their best ball in these upcoming games. But, at this point, it is what it is. And, to even stay in the hunt and have a chance, almost have to be perfect from here on out.
Yeah, and perfect they will absolutely have to be. And it's going to have to start this week versus New Orleans in a game that I think we can all agree is one that Miami should win. And ideally do so in a convincing manner. But, it's the NFL. There are no layups. When it comes to the defense and the turnaround that they were able to make, again, I think that it was just a matter of Anthony Weaver. He was coming up with all of these really exotic blitzes in the first half of the season, doing whatever he could to generate pressure. And, I think that that's something that with a lot of new pieces on the defensive side of the football, it kind of took them a little bit of time to adjust and gel. And I think that now that they've gotten to that point, and you've seen some really exciting developments from the young players, Kenneth Grant and Jordan Phillips starting to come around on the defensive line. Dante Trader, who has been really good find at safety, it looks like, in the 6th round. Those are some of the guys that have, Jason Marshall Jr. He's been solid since he's come back from injury. Offensively, I'm really interested to see what this team looks like this week with Darren Waller back in the fold, because it kind of feels like this whole move towards we're going to go big and we're going to play more physically kind of came directly on the heels of Darren Waller specifically kind of going down. I know we talk about the Dolphins having to learn how to play offense differently post Tyreek Hill, but I think we saw almost like a second mini evolution after Darren Waller got hurt. And I'm kind of interested in seeing what parts of, what changes and what stays the same with Waller being integrated back into the mix.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Dolphins offense a little bit later on, but we have to talk about the turnaround for this Dolphins defense. All right, from weeks 1 through 6, they were literally the second worst defense in most major metrics, in EPA per rush and success per rush, defending the run, and even defending the pass. But now from week 7 to basically now, which is, I believe, week 12 or week 13, we're on week 13 now.
13.
All right.
Yep.
The Dolphins are ranked number 1 in defending the rush by EPA per rush, 8th in success rate, 12th overall in EPA per play, but defending the pass is still a weakness where they rank 25th in EPA per pass given up. Now, look, they've become one of the better run defenses in the NFL, and it's a bit of, a little bit of a tinkering for Anthony Weaver, more so pairing those lighter boxes with aggressive fits, having Dante Trader Jr. or Iffy Melifonwu or Minkah Fitzpatrick down, either as a potential nickel linebacker or as that third safety. Those guys can get aggressive downhill and fill in that backside pursuit. Not to mention, Jason Marshall Jr. is adept at also filling run gaps and defending the run. The other thing is, Coach and Eric, we've seen a lot of 3 interior defensive linemen playing on the defensive line, more so of an odd front, with 4 or 5 people with their hands in the ground. You see Zach Sealer and Bradley Chubb on opposite ends of the defense, either playing as a 5 or sometimes even a 7 technique. Then in the middle, you could have Kenneth Grant or Jordan Phillips or Matthew Butler, and Zeke Biggers has also gotten at least 15 to 20 snaps per game. They're really rotating these young guys in on those specific rundowns, trying to get some pass rush going with Bradley Chubb, Chop Robinson, and Zach Sealer out on the edge, especially after the departure of Jalen Phillips.
Yeah, I think when you look at the ability to go big up front, it kind of allows them to play with those lighter boxes overall. I think that there's something to be said. We talk about offensively kind of creating space, but defensively, particularly when you're looking at guys in the back seven who are good open field tacklers, you almost want to create space for those guys in terms of their run fits to be as clean as possible. And that's what having those three defensive line fronts do for you, is you have guys that are taking up blocks and really opening up those lanes for guys to be able to fill the gaps cleanly. And the Dolphins do, to their credit, have some really good open field tacklers, in the back seven, whether it's, Jordan Brooks, who seems to be tackling everything that moves over the last few weeks, Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's an adept open field tackler. Same thing can be said about Dante Trader, Ife Melifonwu, Jason Marshall Jr. Rasul Douglas is coming back. He's another guy that's really solid open field tackler. I think that's when you pair a really strong, heavy front with guys in the back seven that can make those tackles in the open field. It's an ingredient for a really good run defense. And they've got the athletes as well, to cover the space sideline to sideline on a lot of those runs and get outside as well. So it just makes, from a personnel standpoint, it just makes a lot of sense. This is a really good run stopping group. And it looks a lot more like what we thought it would look like early in the season.
Yeah, but Coach, especially against Washington, they struggled to at least tackle properly. And we talked about on the review pod where they were giving up at least 3 to 3.5 yards per carry, even after contact. Now look, Alvin Kamara is out for this game. The Saints have a decent enough offensive lineman, and not to mention Taysom Hill could also be spelling Devin Neal, who's a rookie for the Saints. They haven't gotten much out of their passing attack either. Now, can Miami's run defense be like what we saw up against Buffalo, or is it going to be somewhere in between like we saw against them against Washington?
I mean, I'm not going to write off another backup running back after we saw what Rico Dowdle did against the Dolphins, when we thought that, having Chuba Hubbard out was going to be a big win for the Dolphins back against the Panthers. So I'm not going to overlook a backup running back, but at the same time, the Dolphins and the way they've used these three defensive tackle sets, when we talk about Zach Thomas and how much success he had in that defense, and he'll tell you that a big part of that was having Tim Bowens and Daryl Gardner up front eating up those blocks. And we're seeing these huge tackle numbers from Jordan Brooks. I think a lot of that is the same idea, where you have those big run stuff, the clogging the lane defensive tackles up front, and it's creating space for Jordan Brooks to fly through and make the plays there. So I would not I want to see them force New Orleans to pass the ball, right? Continue playing the strong, run defense stuff. Continue with those heavy sets and make the Saints show that they can throw the ball. The Dolphins have done well recently in terms of turnovers, so I think that you want to put that young quarterback in a position where he has to make plays, and then let this secondary that's beginning to gel, right? Anthony Weaver is starting to get into his groove in terms of calling stuff, and get him into those third and long scenarios and make them throw the ball and capitalize on that.
Yeah, particularly when you're looking at a young quarterback like Tyler Shuck, if you can get the Saints behind the sticks into those situations where it's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, and you can kind of turn the pass rush loose on him. Typically, those are the kinds of guys that make mistakes. And this is a game where, the Dolphins typically haven't forced a ton of turnovers this season, but this would be a game where I think the defense should be looking to turn over the Saints 2 or 3 times on Sunday and take advantage of an inexperienced quarterback under center for New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, look, if they force Tyler Shaw to pass, um, it becomes a little bit of a vulnerable area for both New Orleans and Miami, just because of how Miami's pass defense is and how leaky it is. Now, look, the Saints and Kellen Moore call 11 personnel almost 69% of the time, which is fifth highest in the NFL. And this Dolphins defense does not do well up against 11 personnel. They are well below average. They are 27th in EPA allowed versus 11 personnel. This could be one area that New Orleans could theoretically exploit, especially if Chris Olave is in the lineup. And it all depends if Chris Olave is going to be in the lineup, because outside of that, they have no one else. I mean, you're looking at Devon Vale, Dante Pettis, Kelvin Austin Jr., Jalen Polk is on IR, Bub Means is on IR, Trey Palmer is on IR. Their fourth, fifth guy, Mason Tipton, he's their wide receiver 3. They have Juwan Johnson as their tight end. Like, I mean, they're injured all over the offense, and it's really gonna, like, Tyler Shaw has no support, and even if they force him to, that you gotta blitz him. I mean, the Saints cannot handle the blitz well, and the Dolphins should look to blitz early and often. When Tyler Shaw is under pressure, he has a negative -0.5 EPA, which is middle of the pack. And when the Saints offense faces defensive that don't blitz, even with time, Tyler Shaw, negative -0.14 EPA. That's with the Saints having Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shaw. It does not matter. The Saints with a young offensive line, you're talking about Kelvin Banks as the left tackle. You could line up Bradley Chubb and Zach Sealer there as a combo, and it could really throw off Kelvin Banks. Then you have Talise Fuaga, who's a sophomore right tackle as well. Your interior for the Saints is pretty solid, and that's where they're going to be looking to run. But if you can get the pass rushers like Chop Robinson, Matthew Judon, Bradley Chubb, and Zach Sealer going, trying to, nudge Tyler Shaw a little bit early on, he might crumble under pressure, and it's going to look very favorable up against the pass.
Yeah. So I think Talise Fuaga is coming back from an injury, if I remember correctly. And then you've obviously got Kelvin Banks as a rookie on the left side. Both guys that I liked a lot coming out of the draft, as well as Radins was one of the top guards that I liked coming in free agency. And then Ruiz is a player that I liked back in that 2020 draft also. So I like the pieces they have up there. But when you have a rookie left tackle and a right tackle that is returning from injury, I think that's a great opportunity to really get creative with your blitz packages, try to exploit the communication issues that they might be having up front with that. I think the big key for the Dolphins, and Hassam, you touched on this a little bit earlier, as far as the ability to wrap up and make the tackles. If I remember correctly, Devin Neal's a little bit more of a scat back type, a pretty good receiver, right? So I would really look for him and limiting him to be a key to the game. Chris Olave is obviously their best skill player, but I think that when you're looking at one main skill player, you should be able to basically eliminate him from the game plan. So it's going to come down to those secondary and tertiary threats that you have to get, and the checkdowns to Neal is one that I could see being an
Well, I think we might have lost Coach a little bit
issue
there, but
if they can't keep him in check.
there's Coach.
Yeah, everything went kind of blank there for me.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, we understood what you were saying. They got to make sure they don't give up so much yardage to Devin Neal. Before we head to break, I want to go on this note. If they stop the run early, especially inside runs early, which the Saints run 62% of the time, the Dolphins have a very, very good path, at least the Dolphins defense, to control this game and not let the Saints score more than 13 to 20 points. The last two games, the Dolphins haven't allowed more than 13 points. The Saints are barely getting by. They can't even get 20 points up on the board. Now, once again, if the Dolphins stop the run inside, the Dolphins defense can control the game and the Dolphins offense can at least try to get some points on the board, be in cruise control mode, and try to get to their fifth win. All right, we'll talk a little bit about the Dolphins offense, but right now we will head to break. Football season is in full swing, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all the action. And it's that time again. Feast week. It's back on Underdog. From November 26th through November 30th, check the app daily for special promos. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, receiving yards, interceptions, and more. Get your picks right, and you could win up to 5,000 times your cash. That's right, 5,000 times your cash. I think I'm going to be taking, and it depends how this Dolphins offense looks like, and we'll talk about it a little bit later on. Devon Achane, 2 touchdowns. I do think he'll get 2 touchdowns. Go ahead and play that on Underdog. Download the app today. Sign up with promo code 3yards to score $100 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's right. That's promo code 3yards. Underdog. Make picks. Win money.
Be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
And we are back. The star of the Dolphins offense, Devon Achane, Daniel Brunskill, Jalen Waddle, and now Darren Waller is coming back. I'm interested to see how this offense will look like with Darren Waller back. And Eric, as you said earlier, will they include Daniel Brunskill with Darren Waller attached in line and maybe Hayden Rucci or Julian Hill more so of like a 13 personnel or 23 personnel with Daniel Brunskill as the Y moving around? Because clearly it's been working for the Dolphins offense, especially running the ball the last 3 to 4 games. They're getting a lot of under center looks. They're beating these teams with play action. They're running the ball well efficiently, whether it's Devon Achane, whether it's Ollie Gordon, and even those 2 to 3 carries Jalen Wright gets per game. I mean, this has been the Dolphins' most efficient personnel package, specifically in the passing game. Like it seems as if they are setting this personnel up to run the ball and then set up play action from it. And it's benefiting Tua Tagovailoa. It's definitely benefiting Jalen Waddle. And I wonder if they could continue with this and it benefit Darren Waller with this too.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out, when Darren Waller comes back, who's going to be the guy that loses the most snaps. And the more that I think about it, I think they like what Greg Dulcich has brought in that F role. Obviously, I don't think they want to take away snaps from Daniel Brunskill. The more I think about it, is Darren Waller's best potential fit here. No, don't get me wrong. He will still do the occasional inline things. But I look at it and I look at Nick Westbrook-Akine maybe losing snaps to Darren Waller. I think that's where he fits in mostly. I think he will take snaps as, in that F role. But I think right now in this iteration of the Dolphins offense, they have more freedom and flexibility to kind of move Darren Waller across formations and have him play in kind of that more hybrid blended wide receiver role. And I think that that's kind of what they'll do with him because, they don't have another threat downfield right now aside from Jalen Waddle. And I think that he's going to be kind of the key to unlocking that secondary option.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I mean, the wide receivers have had an opportunity with Tyreek Hill for somebody to really step up and be that number 2 wide receiver. And Malik Washington has done some nice things, but he hasn't, cemented himself as being the number 2 target by any means. And Westbrook-Ikhine has had a couple of flashes, but is not contributing in the passing game at all. So when you look at the run packages that you've put in there where you have Brunskill and you have either Alec Ingle or Julian Hill in there with him, you don't want to upset that either, right? So you could easily go to that heavy 13 personnel where, like you said, Eric, Darren Waller is in there, but he doesn't have to be anything, right? You can split him out wide and match him up against a smaller corner and just throw a jump ball to him. We've wanted that in this offense for years now. Right, you can use him in motion. You can, use him in the split flow. You can have him be that guy that's coming across and leaking out. You can use him in a lot of different ways, and I think that his familiarity with Frank Smith, I think even though he hasn't been with the team for a long time, I think there's a lot of comfort there that, even while he was, rehabbing and getting ready to come back, there was probably a lot of communication going on there as far as what his role will be when he comes back. And hopefully they've been working on this package for the last few weeks, even though he was only recently activated from the IR list. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Waller is doing. Is he the number 3 in those heavy 13 personnel, right? Or are they trying to continue to do what they're doing? And that's what I hope they don't do, because that feels like what Mike McDaniel has done in the past, is that even when we get new pieces and the personnel changes, seems like he is slow to adjust to the new pieces that are coming back or that we're losing. So in this scenario, we are getting a piece that we have seen in this offense be able to be a real threat, but we don't have to just keep doing what we're doing, right? Let's see this offense evolve, create a new role for Darren Waller. We don't, prior to this season, we didn't see a lot of 13 personnel from them. So let's expand that, right? Keep using Brunskill, get Waller out there doing 100 different things, right? And let's see where this offense can go with that.
Yeah, and look, Darren Waller gives Miami a true flex tight end threat the team hasn't had in forever. He allows McDaniel to run 12 personnel with vertical capabilities, 21 personnel with vertical capabilities, 23 and 13 personnel with a heavy set with vertical capabilities with Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, and Darren Waller in there. It will also force the Saints linebackers like Demario Davis into coverage mismatches. If you also think about it too, Coach, if you're that heavy, it also opens up space for Devon Achane and Ollie Gordon in duo and inside zone variations. They've been running a lot more of those recently. And nonetheless, it reduces pressure on Tua on those intermediate throws. Darren Waller is a multiplier for this Dolphins offense, even if he's not 100% healthy. Like, listen, if he's 70, 80%, if he's there for 15, 20 snaps for the offense, that's still a plus. That's still a win. Like, that gives the threat for this Saints defense. Now, look, this is actually a perfect schematic matchup, especially for Miami's new identity. And I really hope Mike McDaniel does not go back to his old form of 11 personnel, spreading it wide, or the same old in 21 personnel. This Saints defense up against heavy sets like 12, 21, 13, and 22, they are like well below average. They're like in between 27th and 31st. They are better at defending 11 personnel and spread offenses rather than heavy sets and jumbo sets, and what Miami brings at least 20 to 30 snaps in the game. Not only that, Coach and Eric, Austin Jackson is also returning, and that solidifies the right side of the run game. When I take a look at the metrics, the Dolphins have ran much better on the left side of the line by at least zero point 0.2 EPA per rush. Right now, they're at a solid even 0.5 on the right side. They're at 0.24 on the right side. With Austin Jackson, he helps out more of those wide zone runs without the liability that they would have had. And it also strengthens the six offensive line heavy looks where you can put Daniel Brunskill next to Patrick Paul or more so as a guy who's running a motion inserted in between Patrick Paul and Jonas Avenaya to give Jonas Avenaya more help. And Darren Waller in line to Austin Jackson. It also provides a stability for play action boots, movement passes, and once again, split zone flow in the run game.
Yeah, Austin Jackson coming back is going to be huge. And, I would caution people from expecting an immediate boost. We have these offensive linemen returning to the lineup, then, it's going to take a little bit of time for everybody to get up to speed, right? And especially Austin Jackson coming back and playing with Cole Strange, this is going to be somebody that he has not played with before. If it was somebody he played with in a previous season, then maybe it'd be a little bit of a different conversation. But I do expect there to be some growing pains, some hiccups, right? Got to be careful with the stunts on that side that the communication is on point between Jackson and Strange. But once he does get back up to speed, big boost in the running game. They started going to a little more crack toss and stuff like that to Larry Borum's side. And I think that had a lot to do with them not being confident in Borum's ability to create movement in short spaces, like trying to single block that defensive end and creating space. And that's something that Austin Jackson really excels at. I think that we will still have the same issues in pass protection with Austin Jackson that we had with Larry Borum, but we've been, seeing them cover up for that all year. So it's nothing new there. You're not taking a step back in terms of pass protection, but you are taking a big step forward in terms of the run game. And we've all seen that, if that run game continues to excel, then that is just going to continue to open things up in the passing game, especially with the play action, the boots, right? We will see a little more of that going to the right side. I am really looking forward to what Austin Jackson does, but I'm not getting my hopes up too much that, this week is the week that we see that huge jump in the rushing totals. I'm just looking forward to hopefully seeing that side of the line not make any critical mistakes and Austin Jackson just kind of getting his feet wet and getting used to Cole Strange for now.
Yeah, I don't think the Dolphins can afford any critical mistakes, especially along the offensive line in the run game, because if they don't get the run game going, then the Saints defense is really going to force to his hand right there. If they minimize the running game, if they minimize Devon Achane and Ollie Gordon's impact on those inside zone runs, on those dual runs, especially even if they're running with six offensive linemen or heavier personnel, the Saints have shown the ability to affect opposing quarterbacks. Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan, Chase Young, they each have at least 4 sacks each. And if they stop and sell out the run very early on and the Dolphins can't get into play action and they have to spread out wide to at least get something going on offense for momentum, it's going to make life a little bit more easier for the Saints defensive backs with Kool-Aid McKinstry, Alante Taylor, and Justin Reed. Because as we said, Nick Westbrook-Akine hasn't done much. Malik Washington has been serviceable, but he hasn't had that same amount of impact. Jalen Waddle can win on one-on-one matchups, but he's covered and blanketed, and Darren Waller is taken out of the game, especially if he's on a snap count. It's going to become a little bit tough because we've seen a little bit of a step back into his game if he's asked to throw the ball a lot. If he's asked to carry the game, they need to help Tua out with this run game.
Yeah, and I think, we kind of touched on it in the last episode. But I think one of the things that we can kind of see, and I hope that is seen from this week, is we talked about more versatility within the heavy personnel usage in terms of, they're very effective throwing the ball out of those heavy sets, but they really only do so on early downs. And I think adding a guy specifically like Darren Waller, on third downs when you got to have it, can really kind of open up that extra layer to those personnel packages to give them a little bit more versatility in what McDaniel is able to call. And I think that the heavy personnel is going to be a big key in this one, because you're right. When you do have a pass rush as good as the Saints do, and it's a pretty good pass rush, you're going to have to run at it in order to kind of mute it a little bit. Adding Austin Jackson certainly helps that. But I also think, being able to do more within the heavy personnel to where they can lean on that, maybe even more so in this game than in weeks past. I think that's going to be a pretty big edge for Miami in this one.
Yeah, I think I can pretty much say how the opening script will go for this Dolphins offense because I've seen it. The last 3-4 games, they're going to come out with heavy. They're going to run some type of inside zone or do a run. They'll get 3 or 4 yards on first down. Second down, they might run again, or if not, they'll go to that RPO glance route that they always throw to Jalen Waddle on second down, and they'll get a first down through there. Then they'll continue. They'll either run a crack toss or some type of sweep with Devon A-Chain. Then they'll run again, and they'll pass on third down to get into the red zone. The red zone is key for Miami. They couldn't convert up against Washington. They did up against Buffalo, and they need to be able to do that up against the New Orleans Saints. But here's the thing, guys, and this is something I read over this Thanksgiving weekend, which really caught my eye. Mike McDaniel calls RRP on 3 downs. He goes run, pass. Very efficient in running the ball on first down. Very bad, very, very bad efficiency at running the ball on second down. And then good efficiency on passing on third down. The second down runs or the second down passes, whatever down and distance they're going to be at, needs to be key, and they need to make sure they get into third and shorts or at least convert to first down. That right there, especially in the opening game script, we're going to see how the game will dictate. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I agree. Anytime that you are, any team's going to talk about getting into third and manageable. And, at this point in the arc of Tua's career, we've already established that, he's not the player that we can, you can't build the game plan directly around him, right? So if you're getting into those second down situations and you're not doing well running the ball and you're getting into third and long where it's predictable, then you're not putting your quarterback in a good position, because then defenses are going to drift back a little bit. They're going to tighten up those zones, and there's not going to be the space to get there. Whereas if your second down plays are getting you into 3rd and 3 or less, where the run game is still a factor, even if they're going to more of a nickel defense, the linebackers and the safety, whoever's up in the box there, right, they have to be a little slower in their reaction, because you have to respect the run game, especially with somebody like Devon Achane, who if you don't respect him, if you just drop back into your coverage and they hand it off, right, he can make you look silly. We've seen him make defensive backs miss in the hole and take off for a 60-yard touchdown. So I think that's always going to be key for an offense, but especially in an offense where you're not building around the quarterback, right? If you have a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen or somebody like that, I feel like you can live in third and long a little better, because those quarterbacks are more capable of creating in any situation, right? For those quarterbacks, it really doesn't matter to them whether it's 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 7. right? You've probably got a similar chance of those quarterbacks being able to convert it. But at this point in his career, that's not what Tua is. So this offense needs to continue to be efficient and create those third and short opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, anytime as a coaching staff, you're taught to kind of key in on trends. And if there are trends, if there are patterns, if they're identifiable, other teams know it. You know it for the most part, I would hope. And at some point, there's going to have to become a counterpunch. Whether that is a play action on second down, just something to kind of keep teams on their toes. Just, hey, this is what the pattern has been, but, now we're going to add another wrinkle. And I think that, you can also look at, if you wanted to go even deeper into the splits, the types of runs that get called on second down versus the types of runs that get called on first down and things of that nature, and really get into the nitty gritty of it. But again, I think this is where, particularly having a tight end that you can rely on really helps in the passing game, because when you are calling those play action bootlegs, it's nice to have a Darren Waller in the flat instead of and to be fair, he's been better this year, but it's nice to have a Darren Waller in the flat instead of Julian Hill.
Yeah, you can ground and pound the rock with Ollie, but you have a third and short bootleg. You just dump it off to Darren Waller, and he can just make it happen in an extra 2 or 3 yards. Is definitely a big help. Big week for Miami. They need to be able to win this game, continue to stay healthy, and stay alive in the AFC race. After the Saints, they play the Jets in New York. Then Monday Night Football in Pittsburgh. Sunday Night Football back in Miami to play up against Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. Then their home finale up against Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and end the season in New England against Drake May, and the New England Patriots. They really got to win the rest of these games. Win out, and you may be in, especially if the rest of the AFC, such as the Steelers, crumble. If the Patriots potentially crumble as well, if they lose a game or two, if the Bills continue to be inconsistent, there is a chance, which is why, Eric, the Dolphins are in the hunt. I'm your host, Hussam Patel. This has been Scouting the Fins on the 3 Yards Per Carry Podcast Network. My co-hosts, Eric and Coach Smith. Stick with us here on the 3 Yards Per Carry Podcast feed and the 5 Reasons Sports Network. As always, go Fins.